Have you ever actually know someone who has won the lottery? What happened to them? My mill 33,000 won on a scratch-off. She paid off some debt and got new windows installed on her house. The new windows in an 1890s farmhouse are amazing. Don't think I've seen a happier woman. Love this one. Windows are no trivial expense. My neighbor won the lottery in his 60s. It was something like 1.2 million in the late 90s. We lived in a trailer park in a rural part of the US, a pretty low cost of living area, so the money stretched pretty far. He bought his trailer and land outright with the money and pretty much just spent every day drinking on his porch and yelling at his goats. IRC, he used a good chunk of what he won to put his son and grandkids through college. Died of liver failure at like 85 or something. Not a terrible way to do it, all said and done. I like that he was content with the trailer. 2 people, actually. One was a friend of mine in high school who won $15,000 on a scratch and win. She rented a house downtown and threw a party. Somebody said I should stop by and check in on her, because they'd been down to the party and hardly recognized anybody. Sure enough, I got there. My friend met me on the door, put way too much money in my hands and told me to go get a bottle of wine. She just partied with whoever was around until it was gone. Took about 3 weeks. Next was a friend of mine from Toronto who is mostly known for doing zombie walks. She won a cash for life dealio, and I think it's around $10,000 a month. She bought her the ramen and started making 50s-style monster movies and is generally living a high-rolling rockabilly lifestyle. Someone got $30K or something. Not too much, not too less. She got a lot of hate for not sharing her riches, whatever the fuck that means. People wanted her to share $30K? Lol, WTF, that's like nothing, especially after taxes. Friend 1 million won. They paid off their house. Saved for their kids' education and basically don't live paycheck to paycheck anymore. Both of them still work full-time. Technically, a kid from school's parents won a few $100,000. His parents were chill, acted like they had the same money as before, but the kid was acting like a baller. My aunt's husband won $36 million. They bought property and traveled. He liked to fish and drink and build stuff. He passed away 3 years ago, but he was an awesome dude. So how's your favorite aunt doing these days? Friends of ours won 30 mil. They took a group of us on vacation. Bought a cottage and built a house. Not much really changed. They are doing great. I know 2 people who have won significant sums. Well, significant for me. First guy won $100,000 back in the early 2000s. Him and his wife agreed to split it between them. She bought a car. He slowly lost most of his half over the course of a couple of years playing in poker tournaments. Other people aren't friends, but I see them a few times a year. They won $61 million in 2013. They bought a home in my mom's neighborhood, lakeside property, but priced in the $200,000 $500,000 range back in 2013, depending on which lot. I'd met them several times before finding out that they were, screw you, rich. You'd never know they were more than a regular retired couple who had enough money in the bank to take cruises and such. They are some of the most down-to-earth people I know. Nice cars, but nothing fancy, etc. I had a patient, a hairdresser who owned her own shop, who won about $6 million. Her winnings were announced in the local newspaper. She consulted the right professionals, worked a plan to sell her salon, and mapped a way to retire on her winnings without a change in her lifestyle. But she told me that she had old boyfriends, and even guys that barely knew her in high school, who called her with some variation of, "You know I always loved you." She just laughed and blew him off. I sold mortgages for a bit and talked to a lady who was dead broke, in mountains of debt, and was trying to consolidate debt and refinance her house. Through the course of conversation, it came to light that she won almost $4 million playing the lottery, and took home $2 million after taxes, about 3 years earlier. She was in bad financial shape, so I asked what she did with all the money and how she got into the situation she was in, and she honestly had no idea. Her words were essentially, "We took a few trips, bought 2 new cars, paid off the house and stuff, but I have no clue how I spent $2 million and racked up over $100,000 in credit card debt in 3 years. Something strange must happen when you win money that you just stop paying attention to where your money goes. It's very weird. Like, put it in the bank. Don't spend money on stupid shit. Don't give money to relatives that come crawling out of the woodwork." A friend of mine won about $250,000 at a casino, and then he lost almost all of it. I have a slightly similar one. My great-uncle has hit big in the casino a few times and can waltz into any gas station and seems to come out with like a 5K winner on a scratcher every time. All I know is at one point he just sold his house and dipped out to Mexico with everything he had left, and no one has seen him since. Yes. I won $5 last week, smiley face. How did you quit your job? My stepdad's brother $4.3 million won 20 years ago. Still chillin'. Invested in real estate and kept rolling them over for profit. I know someone who won $100,000, after taxes, in his 20s. He bought his dream vehicle, a $20,000 motorcycle. The rest he used as a down payment on a house. It wasn't life-changing money, but enough to give him a jump start on adult life. Kept his day job. When I was 10 in late 70s, my friend's family $3 million won. I went to his house to see if he was coming out. The house was empty and they were gone, and I never saw him again. I knew a welder who won a $30 million jackpot. He retired, bought 2 Ford GTs and spends his time doing yard work, playing low-stakes poker tournaments, and raising his 2 young kids. His wife bought a crib from me used for their second child. I won $250,000 on a $5 scratch-off 8 years ago. It was right before Christmas and I had been fired 2 weeks before. After taxes we got a check for $167,000 and some change. Paid off all credit cards, bought the wife a brand new Honda Accord, bought a small business. Lived off it for the next several years while I grew my business and my wife got her master's. It was life-changing. Not the lottery, but I know someone who got into a minor accident on a rich person's property and made $2 million in a settlement. Spent nearly all of it on drugs and alcohol. How the fuck do people do this? I loved me some drugs and alcohol back in the day, but there's no way I'd spend that over a few lifetimes. Like I really went hard in my 20s and spent a lot, and it's still a drop in the ocean. And this was only a decade ago, so we're not talking anything 1900s prices I was buying at. 2008 and beyond. If I went back to my behaviors right now with that money, I wouldn't enough that I could have many luxuries left over. It's just mad to me someone can blow such a monumental amount. I know someone who got an $80,000 settlement from being hit by a car when they were 13. They got the money when they were 18 and by 21 it was gone. He got a car, a computer, weed and cocaine out of it. A lot of cocaine. Coworker's sister won $2 million. 6 months later asking him, and me, at our job, for help to feed her children. Worked with a dude who had the top part of his ear bitten off by some rich person's dog. Ended up getting like $250,000. The only thing he had to show for it was a beat-up BMW and a drug-induced speech impediment. Yes, a friend of my mum's won $30 million. She's an awesome hard-working single mum of a disabled child who has been dealt a rough hand. She has a nice house and car. Her dad has a nice house and car. She still works part-time and has set up a relief center for parents with disabled children. I don't know anyone who deserves it more than her. I won $1,500. Received like $950 because taxes. Donated it all to an orphanage in my home country because I was doing okay with money. Since then there have been times I needed the money, but I don't regret it. A mate's brother was in a syndicate at work back in the early 90s. They won and he gave his car to his brother and was looking at buying a house. It turned out that it was the most people ever at the time to win, and he ended up only getting $20,000. He asked his brother for his car back. I won $2,000 on a scratch-off once. Fixed my missing tooth lol. Aunt's older brother won several millions in the 90s. Several trips to rehab, 2 bankruptcy filings, and now he's back working as a janitor. Worked with a guy in the 90s that 28 million won. Never saw him again. Relative won over $100 million. Got new houses, hired security to make sure kids stayed safe. Then relationships with relatives and friends deteriorated because everyone thinks that money is theirs. Mom won a bit and was able to get my siblings and I new clothes and move out so she didn't have to stay in an abusive relationship. My aunt $200,000 won in a slot machine. She owned like 25% of a Chevy dealership. She sold her part, retired, and she takes like 1 week vacation every 2 months. The only solution is to buy assets that give income. You don't have $10 mil. You have the income that $10 million worth of assets provides. Spending $1 million in a year is living like you have $25 million in assets. It's the trap for them all. I work in bankruptcy. I met a client that had won twice. When the attorney asked her what happened to the money, she said she gave most of it to someone. The attorney just happened to recognize the name she uttered. We looked him up and we had represented him in his own bankruptcy previously. It was a conflict of interest, so we couldn't take her as a client. However, it's always been fascinating to me that 2 lottery winnings passed through the hands of 2 people that both still ended up in bankruptcy. An ex's grandparents won $15 million after the payout. Bankruptcy in just about 5 years. Yes. I see him all the time in the Quickie Mart chasing another win, buying up scratches, etc. Almost every time I am in there he is sitting in the parking lot scratching off tickets. He said he still has around $200K from his $1 million win a couple years back. Drives an old vet. So pretty much a perpetual gambler. One of my friend's sisters told me about a guy who won about $20K on scratch cards. From what she told me, he did quite a lot of drugs and as a result, or as a result of other things, was in a fair bit of debt to people. So as soon as people got wind that he won that money, he was basically hounded by lots of people he owed money to, and it was all gone. I won $250 from a pull tab once. It put me in a good mood for the rest of the week. One person I know won the lottery and started a hair salon with his husband. Weirdly, he went right back to work at other jobs, so I guess it was just to have another income stream. Smart guy. My friend Olivia won $100,000 off a scratcher ticket. Nodded off on heroin and suffocated on the exhaust fumes from her new Audi in her garage a week later. My ex's good friend $50,000 won. He ended up getting back with his ex, going down a really dark path, and blew it all on meth. Shortly after the money ran out, he had a psychotic break and hung himself in an abandoned warehouse. Watching his mother cry at his funeral will stick with me forever. My ex-husband won one of those things where you hang onto a car for 5 days and the last one standing wins. Well, at the end of it, there were still 5 people standing. So, they pulled keys out of a hat and he picked the right key. It was a Toyota Echo. We sold the car and used the money to finance our move cross-country. How in the world do you all know so many lotto winners? Isn't it far more likely to get struck by lightning?